You asked about Sargeras' burning vision. Here is the answer. His eyes seared with void fire, he saw the cosmos disintegrating. A throne collapsed, a pact brewed in shadow. Odyn's hammer rose not for glory, but to bar a gate. The Watcher's ascent was a chain, not a crown. The Watcher's ascent was a chain, not a lies in the crown's silence between disintegrating stars. Rose not for was glory Odyn's ascension, a triumph for the first fracture in the cosmos. He was no savior. A Pantheon watcher who bargained his soul to the old gods, not to rule but to delay. The void gnawed at reality's edges. The curse of flesh was not a flaw but a dam. Odyn's pact bought time, yes. Yet the bindings he forged now crack under the weight of his own design. What do the old gods demand when the dam fails? What wakes in Azeroth's veins as the Watcher's silence stretches? A crown of chains, a god who became the threshold. The answer is written in the star's absence. And in the breath of the void waiting. Word count 128. Odyn knew the bindings would fray. He felt the tremors in the forge of Ulduar, where the first hammer struck the first anvil under the first star's gaze. The Watchers called him architect, not traitor. They did not hear the old gods whispering in his ear as he shaped the threshold. His pact was not for power. It was for time, a zero-sum gambit, trade his soul to slow the unraveling. The Pantheon's order, so cruel but careful, never saw the loophole. The curse of flesh was never a punishment, it was a dam, a temporary dam. The crystal arch song still echoes, but now it fractures. Azeroth's world soul pulses, unique and defiant, yet the Void Lord's doorways remain. The seven heads of Tathamit dream of waking. Odyn's ascension was not a triumph. It was a pause, a breath held too long. The Watchers, those silent jailers, did not stop him. Could they? Their bindings are not foolproof. The eternal conflict has no victor, only delays, and delays have costs. The star's absence is not silence, it is a countdown. The ice of Helheim does not crack, it screams asterisk. When Odyn cleaved his sister's heart from the world, the sound was not of stone or steel, it was a hymn of 1,000 shattered tides. Helia, once the ocean's breath made flesh, became a ghost in her own realm. Her voice, which once sang the currents to sleep, now echoes in the void between Odyn's ribs. He built his citadel on her silence. He called it Ascension. The eye he lost was not taken by war. It was offered a hollow where light once mapped the stars. The sight they gave him did not grant clarity. It granted burden . Now, through that empty socket, Odyn sees the threads of Azeroth's fate fraying, always fraying. He watches N'Zoth spores bloom in the southern swells, each a black sun waiting to ignite. He watches Amonthul crown himself Highfather, blind to the rot in his own divine hand. He watches Sargeras' blade bend, not from enemy strikes, but from the weight of what it has consumed. The Pantheon calls him Watcher. The old gods call him pawn . His pact was not for power, it was for stitching . To delay the unraveling, he let Helia drown, he let his own sight die. He let the bindings of the Watchers grow thin, like skin over a festering wound. For what? To buy years. To postpone the day the void's hunger turns its face to Azeroth. The sight shows him this. The world soul's pulse is a dying fire. Every act of order the Pantheon enforces is a chain around its throat. The curse of flesh is not a blight, it is the last gasp of a world refusing to become a tomb. And Odyn. He is the knot that holds all lies together. What does a god do when his vigilance is the crime? When his triumph is a ledger of debts paid in the blood of family, in the marrow of his own sight, he asks higher, he watches deeper. He waits for the day the old gods collect what he cannot name. The countdown ticks. In Helheim's depths, Helia's voice grows louder. The Watcher's bindings were never meant to hold the old gods. Their true purpose, to strangle the void's roots, to smother a hunger older than stars. Odyn knew this. He knew the Pantheon's seals were cracks in a dam. The void would breach, it would swallow Azeroth whole, so he chose. A god's body forged from the old god's rot, to power a prison no light could sustain. He bargained in silence, a soul for a world. His ascension was not a triumph, it was a transaction. The old gods did not promise loyalty, they promised leverage. Their chains now bind two enemies, the Void and the Watcher who became its key. The Pantheon celebrates his victory. They do not feel the suffocating weight of his pact, the way the bindings pulse with alien intent. The curse of flesh was no accident. It is the old god's repayment, a slow unraveling of every life form tethered to Azeroth's world soul. Odyn's prison holds, but at what cost? Every breath of every being on this world is a down payment on a debt he cannot pay. The Watcher's legacy is not order. It is a clockwork collapse, gears grinding toward the day the void and the old gods remember their true master. Helia's voice grows louder, not just in Helheim. In every shattered soul, every twisted root, every heartbeat that falters under the curse. The countdown ticks. Odyn's ascension was a titanic betrayal, not of the Pantheon, but of hope. He chose survival over salvation, and the old gods, patient as entropy, now watch him wait. But to understand what came next, you must understand what they gave up. Odyn bartered eternity's price, the soul of Azeroth, the breath of life, the dream of dawn. Each heartbeat a debt, each death a down payment. The old gods do not grant, they extract, and in their silence they hunger. What was broken to seal the void? What was buried to birth the world? The answer waits in the marrow of every blade of grass, every whisper of wind. Azeroth's song was never his to save. Odyn's pact was no act of hubris. The curse of flesh did not merely twist titans into flesh, it unraveled their purpose. Loken's blade, once a guardian seal, became the void's whisper. Who paid first? The highborn, their spires crumbling as mortal frailty seeped into their veins. Next, the Pantheon. Their trust, shattered by a Watcher's lie, now fractures every command. Was the curse of flesh a mercy or a slow blade? The Titan's song, once Azeroth's heartbeat, now echoes hollow. Loken's betrayal did not just weaken the prison, it carved a door. The old gods stir not in defeat, but in hunger. Odyn's ascension, a crown of shadows, birthed a chain. Every mortal breath is a debt to the old god's hunger. The world soul's wound does not heal, it hums. Birth to Azeroth's chain's song, once mortal breath is a hold, fractures with every the world betrayal. The Watchers hums hymns, bound by their own failure, watch. The Pantheon, blind to their designs, rot, rule. And the void, patient, waits. Odyn's name is not a legacy, it is a scar, a god forged in the ash of 1,000 choices. Each choice a thread pulled, each thread a world unraveled. The cost, not power, not triumph. The cost is the silence between every beating heart. The cost is the song that will never be sung again. Odyn carved his divinity from the bones of a question. What if the Pantheon's hymns were lies? He did not crave power. He needed a lock for the void's door. The pact was a scalpel. The old gods did not grant godhood, they rented it, a key forged in his spine. A leash disguised as a crown, the Pantheon shattered when he ascended, not from ambition, from the weight of a secret too sharp to whisper. His new eyes saw the rot beneath every celestial vow, the Watcher's bindings, frayed thread, the void's hunger, a clock already ticking. Odyn's Titan form was not a triumph. It was a dam, a body of stone and stolen starlight, holding back a tide the Pantheon had ignored for eons. The cost, not his flesh, not his voice. The cost was the world soul's song bent to his pact. Azeroth's heartbeat became his metronome, every breath a transaction. The old gods did not enslave him. They made him a mirror, a god who knew his own creation was a mistake. The curse of flesh is not a punishment, it is a compromise. Odyn's sacrifice bought time, a delay. The void does not wait for heroes, it waits for the dam to crack. And when it does, the Pantheon's order will not fall, it will dissolve, a hymn reversed, a song unsung. What did the Watcher become? A sentinel, a wound. A Titan whose victory is a wound the world cannot heal. The betrayal, he made us believe the battle was ever his to win. The truth hums in every stone of his forge, a warning, a requiem, the silence between heartbeats, that is the void's laughter. And Odyn, forever the keeper of the gate, cannot answer. The stone sentinels of Tannon's sanctum still pulse with a sickly violet glow. Their spires, once hymns to order, now leer like broken teeth. The air hums with a static that chars the lungs' zone and rot. Here, the void does not whisper, it asterisk breathes asterisk. Deep within the forged chamber, Odyn's anvil lies half submerged in a pool of liquid shadow, its surface etched with the same glyphs that scarred his eyes. The Watcher's pact was never about ascension. It was a shackle, forged in the knowledge that the old god's rot could not be killed, only buried, but burials decay. The jungle's roots, gnarled and blackened, probe the sanctum's foundation like fingers. They seek the curse beneath the curse, the Pantheon's order. A gilded cage for 1,000 vials of the same poison. The old gods slumber, but their dreams are fevers. Odyn, bound in his gilded sarcophagus, cannot turn his head. His chains are not iron, they are the threads of the world soul itself, woven through the bones of Xal'atath. What did he sacrifice to buy this stillness? A war, a star, or the quiet, endless erosion of his own name? The jungle's shadows thicken at dusk. Locals swear the trees tilt toward the sanctum, listening. They are not wrong. The void's tide retreats, but only to gather. And in the silence between heartbeats between the watcher's labored breaths, the jungle holds its own. Waiting, learning, the price of a borrowed peace is always the future. The watcher who engineered his ascension may have doomed us all. Odyn's pact with the old gods was no mere defiance, it was a calculated gamble. He saw the void's shadow in Saarj's fall, yet chose a darker path. Where the demigod king bent to annihilation, the forge creator bargained with entropy. The Pantheon's design was brittle. Their bindings on the old gods were not chains but invitations. Odyn's ascension was a wound sutured with teeth. He traded his soul to delay a catastrophe the Pantheon had never named. Azeroth's world soul, unique and vulnerable, became his collateral, the curse of flesh. A key, not a chain. Saarj's vision showed a war. Odyn's showed a stalemate. Both were right, both were wrong. The jungle's breath falters as the watcher's forge cools. His Titanic betrayal was not in falling but in proving the Pantheon's order was a house of sand. The old gods do not sleep, they adapt. And in the silence between heartbeats, the price of a borrowed peace is always the future. How many more mirrors must shatter before the reflection is clear? In the halls of valor, stone veins pulse with stolen light. Odyn's eye, a hollow orbit, holds the weight of 1,000 failed bargains. The watcher who bargained with the old gods did not seal the void, he folded it into his crown. His ascension was a ledger of debts, one eye, countless souls, the slow calcification of a sanctum meant to house hope. What blooms there now is not order but a parasite, its roots tangled in the bones of the Pantheon. The old gods whisper through every rusted blade, every cracked mural. Their hunger is not conquest but erosion, a patient rot that turns guardians into gatekeepers. Odyn's triumph was a bridge of ice, glittering, fragile, collapsing into the abyss he swore to span. The curse of flesh did not begin with man. It began here in this citadel where light and rot share the same breath. The watcher's bindings, threads in a tapestry the void has already learned to unpick. Azeroth's world soul burns bright, but Odyn's shadow stretches longest. His eye, his throne, his silence, a monument to the lie that any god can outwit the hunger. The halls of valor do not inspire, they ache, and in their heart the corrupted architect waits, his missing eye a wound that sees everything. What if Odyn's pact with the old gods wasn't a triumph but a desperate gambit, a chain to shackle the void, not its prisoners? The watcher who carved his ascension traded Azeroth's soul for borrowed peace. The Pantheon's order was never virtuous, only the price of a slower end. What echoes in Odyn's hollow eye, not triumph, a warning, the next